a little bit wet today, but it's day one in the main.
Make a U-turn.
Well, not as bad as when I left, and not as late as I was expecting to be. So we're running good already.
Baby, that's my plan. That's my goal. Baby, that's my plan. That's my goal. Baby, that's my you don't understand.
Well, that wasn't a good one. Nothing really went my way this tournament. Kind of different from the previous ones, where you know, I had stuff going for a while. This one, just nothing happened. Good news is it's not raining. Alright, that's it. Main event, first bullet done. Didn't go well, nothing really went my way. Just a few quick hands to go over here and then I'm gonna head home. This first hand, I'm already down to 17K. I had a couple small pots not go my way, where I paid off small bets on the river. I didn't think they were really worth talking about. So anyway, we have 17K, blinds are 50, 100. There's one limp, of course the car alarm goes off right now. There's one limp under the gun. I make it 350 to go in the cutoff with pocket kings, red kings. I think it's the cutoff. Big blind cold calls and the limper also called. So we go three-way to a flop. The flop is probably bottom, I don't know, not counting flops with aces in them, it's probably like bottom 10% kind of flop. It's 8-7-7 with two hearts. They both check to me, and I think I made a mistake here. Normally I would just bet to get value from draws, to get called by an 8, at least one street, but I decided to get a little tricky, try to like maybe let somebody pick up a worse pair while still not narrowing their ranges too much on this board, because this board is, it really hits cold call ranges a pretty decent amount. But I ended up checking behind. I think it's a little bit of a mistake. Turn is the 4 of diamonds. Big blind now leads. He leads for 525. Under the gun calls. I can't really see doing anything other than calling here. If I raise, it's kind of way overplaying my hand in terms of the value that I can get. I don't think I can really get called by worse if I do that. If I fold, it's just way too nitty. There's so many hands that they could be betting and calling with that we're still way ahead of. So I call. The river is what I think is a pretty good card for us. It's queen of diamonds. Some drawing hands now pick up a pair and might call a bet. The small blind now checks though, and the big line leads for 2K. Again, I feel a little bit handcuffed here because of how I played the flop. It's pretty hard to really give him credit for a 7 when he just calls the turn. It would kind of have to be something like really, really strong. Like he has 8-7 and he just doesn't want to blow anybody out of the hand. Pocket 8s maybe if he limps that in early position. So I decided to call. I figured there are enough missed draws. And on top of that, he also probably would have raised 5-6 on the turn, most likely. Other than that, no draws get there. Queen X of hearts is something that people might think is good in this spot and just bet for value. It's a little on the big side though. But I end up calling. The big blind folds and under the gun turns over pocket 4s for a turned boat. So maybe a little bit results oriented, but I do still think a bet on the flop is probably would have been best. Next hand is literally the very next hand at the table. Under the gun, who's the player from the previous hand who had pocket 4s, opens. He opens to 350. We're still at 50, 100. Alan Kessler, who's sitting in seat 9, I'm in seat 1. He's in the hijack and he calls. I'm on the cutoff with black aces and I make it 1350 to go. What do I have? I must have around 14K now, something like that. I'll put it in the graphic somewhere around here. Folds around to under the gun and he calls. Alan Kessler folds. We go heads up to the flop. The flop is, again, short of something that has, I don't know, could it, I mean, I actually can't really think of a worse flop than this. The flop is 9-8-7, all diamonds. it's a little bit better than some kinds of flops. This guy, I mean, he's opening under the gun, so like he shouldn't have straights that often, probably. He shouldn't have a ton of flushes. It depends on how many suited aces he's really, you know, he's really calling with. But he definitely has some flushes. He definitely has probably every set in his range. But by the same token, there's other pocket pairs he can have. There's some draws he can have. He can have ace king, like with just the ace of diamonds, things like that. So he checks. I bet 1200. He calls. The turn is short of being a diamond, pretty much the worst card in the deck. It's the 10 of hearts. He checks, and this time I decided to check behind. I don't think I can really get value. I'm not sure what I would even be looking to get called by. Any six is now a straight, so pocket sixes gets there. Some hands improve, like he could have pocket jacks, make a straight. He still has flushes in his range. So I just decided to check it back. The river is another meh card. It's the 9 of hearts. So it pairs the top card from the flop. Now, I don't actually think that this is that bad of a card because he can't really improve that much on it. I mean, like, it actually removes a few combos of sets. So pocket nines is now quads, but there's only one combination of it instead of 3. And he shouldn't, in my mind, have a lot of flop 2 pair and things like that. And he shouldn't have a lot of 9x in his range because he'd have to be opening it under the gun. So like pocket nines, maybe ace 9 suited, those are the only kinds of hands that I'd be worried about. And there's only one combo of ace 9 suited anyway. So I actually don't think it's a bad card, and he checks. So now I'm actually feeling pretty confident that I have the best hand. I'm thinking something like pocket queens, ace king with a diamond. These are the kinds of hands that he's likely to have. So I go ahead and bet. I bet 1.8k, and he thinks for a while. And of course, when he doesn't immediately call, I feel very good about having the best hand. But he calls and rolls over the good old pocket sevens for a full house. Not what I was expecting to see, not something I was happy to see, but there you go. That was most definitely not a fun hand. So that hand knocked me down to about 10,000 from a 20k starting stack. Not ideal, but you know, it's still a lot of blinds. That's the thing about the main event is it's 40-minute levels and the blinds go up the same as in the smaller event. So it's a pretty big deal. You start with 400 bigs, second level it's 200 bigs. In level 4, it's still 100 bigs if you have starting stack. So I'm in okay shape at this point. Just never fun to lose half your stack in like the first few levels. So this next hand happens at 100, 200, and I have about 12,000. I picked up a couple small pots, you know, in the meantime that I didn't record. I must not have thought they were worth talking about. I don't really remember what they were. I think there's mostly just stuff like, you know, I take something down with a C bet or something like that. So we're now at 100, 200. Under the gun opens to 400, and it's folds to me in the cutoff with pocket fours. I call, and the big blind also calls. So we go 3-way to the flop. The flop is okay. It's not, we don't smash it or anything, but it's 6-5-2 rainbow, and it checks around to us. So at this point, I do expect to have the best hand quite a lot of the time. The big blind can have better hands, but under the gun pretty much can't. So I just bet pretty much as an equity protection thing. I just want people to fold 2 overs, and I'm okay getting called by like 7-8 sometimes. The big blind calls when I bet, and I'm not super excited about that. I think there's a decent amount of hands in his range that beat me, but I expect it to be like a decent amount of like 7-8, maybe some stuff like 7-4 suited, and definitely some 6x and 5x. I don't really expect him to be floating with ace high, which is relevant on this turn card because the turn is an offsuit ace. I don't expect him to have a lot of aces, so I expect that while it's not like an amazing card for me by any means, I'm sometimes ahead still, beating draws. But I don't think I can really get any value on the turn. When I bet the turn, I think too many people I'm gonna get called by too much stuff. So when he checks, I check behind. The river is an offsuit jack, and he now leads for 2,000. It's kind of a weird bet because he's really representing that he has better than one pair, in my opinion. It's very difficult for him to have an ace because I don't think he'd float the flop with that, with someone to act behind him that often. And the only kinds of hands that really improve on the turn or river are things like ace 6, ace 5, and probably suited, if I had to guess. So I end up making the call. Now, I did talk about this hand with somebody, and my friend said sometimes people turn 5x or 6x into a bluff to get me to fold like pocket 8s in this spot. so he doesn't like to call. It's definitely a valid point, and tournament players do sometimes do kind of interesting, weird bluff lines like that, so I think that does make me kind of lean a little bit more towards a fold on the river, but I ended up calling. The other thing is that his sizing just looks a little bit nutted. He had Jack 5 offsuit for a little bit of a questionable defend in the big blind, but hey, he got value, so who am I to judge? So at this point, I'm now below 10,000 again, and not really feeling that great about it. It's kind of ironic because I felt like I had a very soft table for a 1675, but I just couldn't get anything going. I did get a couple hands through where I would either 3-bet shove or like I opened, got a call and c-bet, things like that, but I didn't really win any other hands after this. There was a spot where I double barreled when I picked up an open-ended straight draw, and I got check shoved on, and so I just ended up folding. In this next hand, we're at 150, 300 with a 25 ante now. There's this girl who's new to the table. She's young, Asian. She's been in a lot of pots, limping a decent amount of pots. I haven't really seen her do anything super crazy, but just because she's in so many hands, it seems like she's not very good. She limps in early position. There's 3 limps behind her, and I'm in the small blind with 9-7 of hearts, and you know, something like a little bit under 20 bigs at this point. So I considered shoving, but I thought that I could just call. I mean, it's only half a big blind to call, and the pot is so big, I'd rather just try to hit something and just play from there. The big blind is almost never going to be raising me. He's pretty straightforward. So I call, big blind checks, and we go 6 ways to the flop. The flop doesn't bring anything interesting. It's 5-3 deuce rainbow. I check, obviously. I have 9-7 of hearts. I just haven't connected with the board at all. It ends up checking around. At this point, I'm actually already thinking to myself, if a 7 comes, I'm probably just open shipping it. If a 9 comes, I might bet small because there's a lot more 9x hands that are reasonable that would beat me. Things like 9-8 beat me, 10-9 beat me, Jack 9 suited, things like that. But 7x, people aren't really, even in limped pots, they're just not coming in with a lot of 7x that is beating 9-7 suited. So I'm literally having this thought process as the turn comes out, and the turn, lo and behold, is the 7 of spades. So true to my word, I shove. It's 5,300 into about 2,000. And the big blind folds. The girl who I was talking about thinks about it for probably a minute and ends up calling, which I feel pretty good about it. I was thinking to myself, she probably has something like 7-6 suited or 8-7 suited, and I'm gonna be in a really great shape to double up. Now, it's a little bit weird because I feel like sometimes she might have 7-5 suited, but there's fewer combos. But just because there's 3 people behind, I don't know how wide she's gonna call. But with top pair, people usually just side call. So it folds around, I turn over my hand thinking it's probably gonna be good, decent amount of the time. She assures me, oh, you're ahead, you're ahead. I'm like, okay, what's your hand? She turns over ace king with the ace of spades. Now, the 7 of spades did bring a backdoor flush draw, but she doesn't have a flush draw. And she's actually blocking all the flush draws that I am likely to have. So, pretty weird call. She does have a gut shot in 2 overs. She got 10 outs. But I just thought it was a really weird call with 3 people behind you. Like, she's calling off more than a third. She's calling off around a third of her remaining stack, and I'm just gonna have her crushed way too often. I think even 10 outs. Like, I bet like 2.5 times the pot. She's just never getting the right price here. But ace of diamonds comes on the river for the knockout, and yeah, that was basically what my tournament was like all day. So it's about 3 p.m. now. I didn't feel like playing cash games. I'm just gonna drive home, have some work I can do, and then tomorrow come back, fire a bullet too. Hope we have better luck then. Talk to you guys later.
You're the star.